more fun you can have, really. And it's fun to work with textures. But for this, I'm just kind of using like a medium acrylic here. So yeah, we're going to start with some white. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with the sky. So the reason we're putting the white down first is because we only have an hour to do this painting, an hour and a half. So I try and plan all of my paintings as if the paint is going to be wet the whole time, because generally you don't have drying time. So, taking that into account, that's why I like to mix colors on the canvas, because, like I said, the paint's going to be wet. So we're taking the white and we are going to do the top third section of whatever size canvas you're using. If you're using an 8 by 10, it's going to probably take up less space than it is on my 11 by 14, but that's what we're doing. So we're going to fill in here with white, which seems a little ridiculous to put white on white, but that's what we're doing. And if anybody ever has any problems hearing me or anything like that, please let me know. I'm not used to using this microphone because it's my husband's streaming microphone. It's special or something, a little more high tech than I'm used to. But for this, I figured you'd probably want my voice not to sound like it's coming out of a really bad laptop speaker or microphone. So, okay. So we've got our white. And you want it pretty thick on here. Generally, I like to do enough where your brush just kind of glides without feeling like the friction of your canvas on it too much. And that's a good indicator of you have enough paint on your canvas. So that way you'll get a nice coating. So when we're mixing our colors, you're not going to have the kind of, it's going to mix easy. It's going to mix easy. You're not going to have the friction from your canvas. This, I'm using a stretched canvas. It's just one that I buy in bulk for all my classes. If you're using a canvas boards tend to have a coarser texture because they're manufactured. They're like a texture that's been put on a board. So, it's a little coarser, so it may take a little more paint to cover. If you're using a smoother board, like they make canvases in like all different kinds of linen textures and all different kinds of crazy stuff like burlap and whatnot. It's just gonna be different no matter what you're doing. I'm not rinsing my brush out yet, and you are free to rinse yours if you wish. I like to use as much paint off of my brush as possible, especially when I'm about to mix colors anyway. So I'm not rinsing my brush, but if that bothers you, then please feel free to rinse your brush out. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to get some blue. I'm actually using a different blue than the painting that I did for the sample for advertising, because my blue paint that I thought I had at home was actually dried up. So I'm using some that I got off of Amazon. That's just kind of a medium grade, cheaper line. So this may be, like, my end result may look a little bit differently than the painting that you saw when you signed up, but that's just because I'm using slightly different colors than that. And yours may look a little bit differently too, because you're probably not using the paints that I am, and that's okay, because that's the beauty of everybody doing the same painting but having different supplies, different size canvases, you know. But you'll be amazed when we're done. Just, I mean, you can tell what we're all going by, which is always amazing to me. So we're going to do some blue for our sky, of course. The trick with our blue here is that we are going to start darker with our blues and get lighter as we go down our white. So what this means is when we're adding our blues up here, see, this is a nice cerulean blue here. They call it phthalo on this tube. This is cerulean. I don't know what they're smoking. But, okay, so we're starting heavy up here. So I would start with a line of blue at the top. So this will be our darkest blue up here. And then this is what our white's for. We're going to gradually bring this down and work it into our white. See how it's kind of getting lighter as I go? Let me see if I can brush it down. Sorry, like I said, I've got a delay on this camera. So I'm trying to adjust so you can see the best. And if you want to, you can leave streaks in your sky. You know, it's completely up to you. If you like the look of different colors in your sky like this, like I could leave this dark here, you know, that's perfectly fine. Everybody's a little bit different. Every sky's a little bit different here. But the main thing is just that we're leaving our darker blue at the top and then working it into our white with less and less paint down here. So this is going to end up a nice light sky blue down here. And I'm going to leave mine a little bit streaky. Personally, I like to have a little bit of different colors in my sky sometimes. You hardly ever see a blue sky that's just completely blue, but you do get them. Like we had one today, and it was a dark blue. So, okay, so that's what I'm going to leave mine. Maybe I'll work a little bit more in here. And you can start yours as dark as you like. I usually like to leave mine on the lighter side just because we're going to be bringing in some mountains here in a second. And the mountains, you want them to have a bit of a contrast with your sky. And that means that you want one to be lighter than the other. So I like to have my furthest back mountains a little bit darker than my sky. So that way they're clearly visible. And, you know, it creates a very nice look. Next thing we're going to do, again, I'm not rinsing my brush out. So you're welcome to or not. If you do, just a word of advice, if you do rinse your brush out, please, rub it on the bottom of the jar or cup or whatever you're using, and make sure you get as much water out of it with your paper towel as possible, because if you don't, you are going to put that water into your paint, and that may make your painting runny, which is not what you're going to want. Believe me, you'll end up with weird streaky separation of your paint, and it's not an attractive look for anything unless you're doing like a really sad painting where it's like raining and everything's wet. So yeah, so make sure when you rinse your brush out that you dry it as much as possible. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to take a little more of this blue, and we are going to start with our furthest mountains. And I know y'all living in Texas, you don't get mountains, but we see mountains. The funny thing about mountains is, especially here and especially with this painting, is that the further away they are, they kind of get this weird bluish hue, which is why they call them Blue Ridge, I guess. But so that's why we're doing our blue. And you'll see when we're adding you know what? I think I tapped the mute button. Are we good? We're good? Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, yeah. We good? Did I fix it? Okay. Somebody thumbs up, smiley face me. Did I fix it? I think I tapped a button. I talk with my hands, and this is very strange. Okay, we're good. Okay, anyway, I was rambling about the mountains. I apologize. Okay, so we're going to take our blue, and we're doing our furthest mountains. And like I said, so mountains, when we're younger, we do like the zigzag mountains, and maybe the Rockies are a little bit more like that. But these mountains, they roll, and they have lumps and bumps and dips and all kinds of things. So the good thing about doing these mountains is they're very forgiving, and they are fun to do. They're very relaxing because you're just kind of dragging your brush. I like to use the long side of my brush as kind of my line, and you'll see how it guides and it keeps your line nice and separate from the other paint, because like I said, we're working with wet paint here. So we're taking our blue and dragging our brush, and as you drag your brush, you're going to want to make your mountains. So you can go up as high as you want to, just don't get into the V-shaped mountains, because these are nice rolling Appalachian mountains here. So you want them to come down just an inch or so, because we're going to have lots of layers of mountains. So nice rolling mountains, kind of skew them a little bit if you want to. Give them a little bit of a bump here or there. And you want to be careful not to work them into your sky very much, because they are separate. So we're just dragging our brush, getting that nice blue onto here. And again, we're adding enough paint where we're not getting the friction of our canvas on here. And it's okay if they're a little softer. They don't have to be super contrasted with the sky, because they are furthest away. So they are going to be a little bit softer than the mountains that we'll see further in. So you can do them however you want to. Oh yeah, these are going to be like really bright blue from the ones that I did earlier. That's okay. It's just happy. All right. Like I said, we're going to come down about an inch and a half, however much you want to do here. And believe it or not, you can rinse your brush out after this. I'm actually going to rinse it. All right, here it goes. I'm rinsing my brush out. I'm going to make sure I get all this blue out of my big brush. Kind of dig it on the bottom there, rake it on the side, and then pat it dry. So I'm going to pat it. See, I've still got a little bit of blue, but for this next color it won't matter so much. If you were going to a white or something that it mattered, you wouldn't want any kind of color coming onto your paper towel. So, all right. Still with our big brush, we are going to move on to green. So here's my green, fancy, in my little takeaway cup here. Got the fancy good stuff here. That's, you know what, that's the beauty of painting though, is that it doesn't really matter, like, unless you have really strong feelings about the quality of your paints. You know, it's just a personal preference. So our next layer is going to be green, because we're starting to come in, seeing a little bit more of the color of the leaves coming in. These are going to overlap our blue mountains here. So the good thing when you're overlapping mountains is you want them to be kind of their own personalities, I guess you'd call them. I wouldn't follow your exact pattern of how you did your previous mountains, but you kind of want to just stick with the same general vibe, I guess you would say, of your mountains. Sometimes, I like to start low, sometimes I like to start high. For these, I'm going to start a little bit high. I'm going to work this in. You want some of that blue to mix in with this green, because there's not going to be that much of a difference visually between your blue mountains and your green mountains. You hadn't gone that close to the mountains yet. So again, we're dragging our brush. We're going to do, an inch to 2 inches, depending how much you want to do here. And you just kind of want it to be its own thing, its own set of mountains from the previous ones. See, even there, I think I followed my pattern a little bit too much. I'm not too fond of that. So I'm going to, you know what, you can even overlap. Look at this. Crazy. Going into my sky with my green mountains. Goodness. How dare I? It works. It works. And I may paint this, I don't even know how many times, and it will be different every time. And that's another good thing about painting. You can follow the same pattern and be in different moods every time, and your hand will just do different things. So, those are my mountains over here. And like I said, we're going to come down a couple of inches. That may even be about 3 inches. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're not staying up too high. If you stay up too high, you're going to have way more to fill in than you will want to. So, okay. Done with our green. And we are going to go on and actually, you know what? I'm going to go on and bring this right side down a little bit. I'm going to break it up. And you'll see why. You'll see why when we come back in with our orange. It's all about contrast and about breaking up your colors. Generally, you want your more vibrant colors closer to you and your more broken colors further back. With this kind of painting, though, it's a little bit different because we're working with the mountains, and the mountains are so vibrant anyway. You could break them, but we're not going to worry about that too much because this is going to be a happy painting. There's not a ton of broken colors in this one. So we're just going to focus on the fall colors, which we haven't gotten to yet. So if you can't tell, I'm rinsing out my brush right now. So getting it good and rinsed out. This one you may want to make sure you don't end up with any residual green. Is everyone doing okay? Hopefully the pace is okay. If I'm ever going too fast, please just let me know and we'll slow down. Because I know we've got some beginners with us, and that's okay. That's why I love doing painting classes, because it's just fun to get different skills and different groups of everyone. I'm just thrilled we have people out of town. That's awesome. I do try and do some small classes in the studio that are like five people maximum, but the virus kind of slowed everything down a little bit. Okay, next thing we are going to do is we are going to do orange. If you do not have orange, you can make it, a little bit of red with a little bit of yellow, you get you a nice orange. For our purposes though, I brought some orange because I've got a lot of orange here and I don't want to have to mix it the whole time. So I've got my orange here. I like using orange. We're going to use it as a nice middle ground. It's kind of our base. So, because right now that's all we're doing. We're laying our base. This is not the final painting. This is just us laying a base so that we have something to build on instead of just white canvas. So we are going to use this nice orange because it's just a nice segue into it creates a nice contrast between darker colors and lighter colors. Like I said, orange is the nice middle ground. So we are going to take this orange. It may take you a minute if you have to mix it, but hopefully you all have it. So I'm just going to go on. We're going to fill in all of this with orange. So that's what we're doing. And this is also our closest mountain. So we're going to overlap our green a little bit up here. And you see wherever that orange touches that green, it's going to break. And we want that because that broken color is going to make our bright colors that much brighter, and it also creates a really nice depth. Because if you had everything the same brightness, it would be boring. Oh, I hear my son. Hey, Flynn. It's his bedtime. This one, since it's closest to us, you can add some texture to it. I am just making a little bit of texture waves, little dabbles, and it'll give you a little bit of a texture here because we're starting to see more of the texture of the trees. We're just going to fill all of this in. And this is going to create a nice smooth surface for us to bring other colors in. Laying this base work. Very, very orange. Very, very orange. But that's okay. Just kind of working some of that broken color down a little bit. Okay. Once you get this filled in, I'm actually going to go on and create another little bit here. And this is kind of a valley for our painting here. I wouldn't call it a whole nother set of mountains because we are at this set of mountains here. It's more like just a little valley, a little hiccup in the closest hill that we're seeing here. So I'm just going to bring some of this orange in here. It's going to be really broken, but that's okay because it's further from us. So it's just going to be a nice break from all this orange here. It's going to look a little muddy. That's okay. That's what happens when orange meets green. And like I said, I'm just going to do a little bit of the dabbing to get a little texture here. And I don't like this curve I've made here, so I'm going to work a little broken in here. So, okay, there's our little valley we've got going on here. And the next color we're going to do, we are going to go into some red. So that's what we're going to, actually, you know what, before we even do the red, I'm still going to take some of this broken color and I'm going to mess up this green a little bit, just a little. All it does is make it not so bright. And when it's not so bright, it'll seem further away. Okay? So even now you can probably tell it's looking further away than if it were the bright green. So I'm just adding a little bit of that nasty color, I guess you call it, that muddy color, that green color. But you know what? These are still going to look green because that's the beauty of having an underlayer, is you can still see it, and that's why we do it. So you see it's a little more broken, and that gives us a little more depth because this orange is going to look like it's right in our face, and then you kind of want the mountains to push back further. So I'm now going to rinse our brush. Still on a big brush. So we don't switch to the little brush until we're doing our final highlights. Hopefully, I see I've got a little bit of a glare. Let me try and... I am. Hey, Bubba. No, I'm not going to open it right now. You go get a bath and go to bed. Okay. See, did I make the glare worse or better? I think I made it worse. Tell you what, this delay on this video is something else. That's okay. Everybody still see okay? I know you can't really see the sky too much right now, but honestly, the sky is not really important right now. So we're going to focus down here. Okay, next thing we're going to do is our red. So I'm going to put my orange up for right now. Switch into our red. Okay, now we have our middle ground with our orange. And once we have our middle ground, we have to start adding our light and our dark, because the good thing about painting, the important thing, is contrast. It's all about light and dark. It really makes things pop if you have your light and your dark. Differences in texture is also a way you can do contrast. That really helps when you're painting. If you do something smooth versus rough, or like nice and even versus kind of messy, these are all kind of contrasting things to work with while you're painting. So what we're doing now, this red is going to act like our darkness that we're bringing in. And we're going to start adding texture. We're going to start adding in a little bit more of the leaf kind of look from the trees, because we're closer in now. We're going to try to get a little more movement. Our sky and our back mountains are very, very smooth. And the mountains that are closest to us, it's just a really nice contrast. We make them a little messy. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make some mess. So we're taking our red, and this is where you really just get to do whatever the mood strikes you. Don't cover up all your orange. The orange is still very important because, like I said, it's your middle ground. So what I'm doing for my leaf texture right now is these little short strokes, kind of like you're tapping the canvas, and you're kind of pulling as you go. And you end up with these really nice little dabbles. And they make a really nice texture for our trees. So that's what we're doing. We're dabbling for trees. That's what we're doing. Now, if you don't really like a lot of red, you don't have to put very much red. That's up to you. This is where you can make this your own painting. The beauty of nature is it's open-ended. So if you don't want a lot of red, you don't have to put a lot of red. I'm just doing enough to kind of accent the orange. Probably put more than I meant to, just because I'm talking and painting at the same time. And you get a little carried away. It's nice to do some clusters, because, maybe there's a little red tree over here, a happy tree, if you will. We'll get some Bob Ross going. So, little patches of red. If you want to hold off on the red and do more yellow, that's completely up to you. Just however much you want to do. I'm doing some dabbling over here in our broken space, but maybe not so much, because we want to keep this broken. So even this red we've got going on here, we want to keep it as broken as possible. But since our undercolor is this muddy, it'll stay muddy. Like, you can still see what your undercolor is here. Now, you can put a little bit in your Green Mountains, but I wouldn't do a lot, because the further back we are, the less distinctive our mountains are. So I'm just dabbling a little bit. I really don't want a lot of red back here, but it's another good way to break up this green with the red, because since red and green are complementary colors, they break each other. They don't like each other. They break up a lot. So just adding a little bit of color. I'm leaving the blue ones alone because they really are far back and you just can't see what's going on back there. They're just staying blue. They're staying out of it. So it's up to you how much red you want to do. Once you get however much red you want to do, we are going to do some yellow. And we're going to do a little trick with our yellow. And the trick with our yellow, you need to have your brush really well washed out. And you want it to be patted dry as much as possible, because the technique we're going to use is called dry brushing. So what dry brushing means is we're going to take, okay, I'm going to do it on my palette over here. I was going to do it on this lid, but I'm going to do it on the palette so I got a little more space here. Okay, what you want to do, get you some paint. And the trick with dry brushing is to not have a lot of paint on your dry brush. And you'll see what I mean. So you want to take your brush and you take your paint and you want to pat your brush until you don't have a lot of paint on it. And it kind of opens up your bristles a little bit. Maybe you can see. So it separates your bristles a little bit. And this is going to make a really nice texture. So you load up your brush like that. And then this is dry brushing. We're going to do a tree here. So we're just kind of highlighting, adding some texture here, some yellow, some lightness. We're doing our little dabbing technique here. But this time, we're doing dry brushing. So, we're going to get a completely different texture than what we had before. I'm trying to lower this brightness here. And you can do this however much you want. When it starts, so since our paint is wet, you're going to end up with the underlayer, the other paints in your brush. That's okay, but you're going to want to load up some more yellow. But be sure, do not rinse your brush out. This is all about keeping it as dry as possible. If you have too much color of other colors you don't want in your brush, tap it onto your paper plate or whatever you're using as a palette. And it will, see how I got some of the orange out here? It will get some of that color out before you put it back into your yellow. So that's what we're doing. So you do this however much you want. I personally like to do a little bit of highlights around my mountains, around my hills. Need more paint here. If you need to, take, like we're avoiding rinsing our brush out. So if you need to, use your paper towel and wipe off some of that orange or red, whatever color you got in here besides the yellow. And that will help you keep your color a little more clean. So that's what we're doing here. This creates a really nice texture. Looks a little more like leaves. You can do, if you've got a special little tree over here, just like we did with the red, except this yellow is really important because it creates a really nice highlight and a very bright feeling for our painting. It brightens up some of the broken colors that we've been working with. So however much you want to do. The only thing I will say is, like before, you want to keep the majority of your yellow, of your dry brushing, towards the front, because the closer you are, the more texture you're going to see. I am going to put a little bit back here, but just a little bit, just to add a little bit of lightness to this back here, because it's starting to get a little bit dark, but I'm not going to add a lot, and it'll just kind of break it up a little bit here, because you can still see a little texture back here. It's just not as thick as the closer. And I'm really not gonna do too much back here with the yellow. If I had remembered, I would have put some more orange back here, but when I have orange back on here, I'll go back and add a little more orange to the green. So right now we're just focusing on our yellow, on highlighting a little bit, on doing our dry brush technique, and getting some of that nice leaf texture in there. And then once you get however much yellow you want to, you can rinse your brush out. You would think this is it, but it's not, because we have our light now, but you know, our red and our oranges have gotten more muddy because we're working with wet paint. So what we're going to do now is it's all about adding colors back in. Adding colors back in and cleaning up things. So you're going to do a little dry brushing with our red, because we've got our light back in here now with our yellows, and it's time to get a little more of that dark back in here again. So still doing our dry brushing technique. I'm actually going to use this lid, because sometimes this is a really nice way to pat color off here. Nice tapping surface. So we've got our red again, and we're going to dry brush some of our red in. This is going to create a little contrast with the yellow that we've done. Try not to get any of the yellow in with your red. Just kind of put them side by side, and it'll create a really nice contrast there, and a little more texture than the red that we had already used. And again, if you don't really like red, you can do this with orange. You're not going to get quite as much contrast, because the orange is a brighter color, a lighter color than the red, but you can do the orange. I'll do the orange after this red, but really the rest of this painting is just personal preference. If you like the way it looks, you know, you're more than welcome to be done. It's just whatever you think looks good here. Do a little more of this, do a little of this dry brushing up here in this. And I'm actually going to go back to my orange, because I really missed out on putting some orange in my Green Mountain range here. So if anybody has any questions about what you want to do next on your painting, please feel free to ask me in the chat. You know, like I said, I'm still working on this. I'm not happy with it yet, But if you're happy with yours, and want to call it, that is completely up to you. I'm going to add a little more orange in because I feel like, we used our orange for our underlayer and we kind of did not give it the attention that it needed. So I'm going to do a little dry brushing with the orange. Just trying to get a mix of textures in here. It breaks it up. I'm actually, believe it or not, gonna add some more green back into here. The good thing about a painting is reincorporating some of the colors that you've used in other places of your painting, and it creates a really nice coherent look and less of a starkness. If you just did one color for certain sections, it would be very, very jarring to your eyes. This way, if you're incorporating colors, like I'm probably even going to put a little blue in here eventually. And that just kind of, by adding the blue back into here, it softens things on your eyes. It creates a nice, like I said, a cohesiveness, and just kind of brings the colors to a full circle. Like I said, I'm gonna add some more orange here to the Green Mountains, but not doing the dry brushing really, because you don't get that texture back here. So I'm just kind of adding this orange in here softly. You can do it in patches if you want to, because you will see it'll almost be like a patchwork quilt back here, especially when the leaves are changing and you kind of end up with all these different colors, and you've still got some green back here. We really didn't even use our small brush. I'm sorry if you went out and bought one. You can use one. I'll show you how you can use your small brush. If you would like to use your small brush, we'll switch over to it. I apologize for not using it more. You can for different contrast of textures. As far as your base layout of your painting, it doesn't really matter. But here, I'll switch to the small brush. If you would like to do your small brush, it is not a requirement, but it does create a nice different contrast from a different texture from the dry brushing. So I'll show you what that does. And depending on your brush, I'm using a smaller round tip brush, and it's a bristle brush. I have used a smaller flathead brush before too, but it just depends on what you have. It'll make different textures. I'm going to do, I'll do some yellow. We'll do some yellow here. And if you want to mix colors, that's up to you. For this kind of thing, I don't generally mix colors just because it's easier for everyone. If I were doing this, by myself, I would mix colors. It's just part of my programming, I guess. And it would probably not end up this bright, but for what we're doing, it is what it is. Okay, so small brush, we're doing the dabbing. I'm going to do more for like thicker leaves. So what you can do is basically polka dots, except they're more like clusters of polka dots. And they don't have to be perfectly round. And if you'll see, it just makes a nice, thick, different texture than the dry brushing. See, like here's the dry brushing area, and then here is using the smaller brush. So it's just different. And it really is better for small areas. It would get very monotonous and annoying to do this all over your mountains. But for, certain areas, like here might be a good place where the hill meets the darkened area here. Just kind of adds a little bit of highlight. If you want to do it, like I said, it's a good highlighting tool. Doing some polka dots, but it's just a completely different texture from the dry brushing. Definitely more individualized, I guess you would say. Like if you're doing a specific tree look, nice clustering look of color. Your paint tends to get thicker, especially since we're doing the wet on wet. So this is pretty thick. Let's see my big old glob here. But it's just different. A different effect. I'll come back through now with the dark red again, I think. But here you can do it over here too. Do a little bit. I wouldn't do as much of this over in this area though, just because you wouldn't see the same amount of clustering over here. But, if you had a really bright cluster of trees, you would probably see it from that far away. So, that's what you can do with your small brush, is just really isolated textures. And if you see, I didn't even use the white anymore. Really, I wouldn't use it in this. It'll just wash out your leaves, and you really don't want to end up with pink leaves. Unless you want pink leaves, I guess you can end up with pink leaves, but I don't want pink leaves. I'm going to take some of the red with my small brush, and we're just coming back in here, adding a little more dark, more clusters of tree color. Like I said, it's all the contrast. Different colors. Creates a really nice contrast here. And after this, I'm actually going to bring back some dry brushing. So like here might be a good place for some red. Get a little highlight. A little pop of those leaves going. Like I said, it's just a nice contrast to the dry brushing and also our base layer. And it doesn't have to be perfect. That's the beauty of this painting. It's very loose, kind of an abstract painting. I have done more realistic paintings. So if you like doing more realistic paintings, you'll just have to keep a watch out. I'm probably going to bring back the owl painting next month. And it's a beautiful painting. It's mostly black and white with a bright orange-eyed owl. So it's really fun. Okay, and that's all I'm going to do here. I'm going to leave my green right now. I am going to bring back some blue though. I feel like, our red's a nice dark But if you want something even darker, since we're not using black in this painting, which I would recommend not using black in this painting, just because when you mix black in with your paintings, they will tend to get muddy. Black, once you add it, cannot be subtracted, and it really does dull your painting down, especially since we're not allowing this to dry at all. If you had accidentally added black, I would say to wait for your painting to dry, and then you can go back over it, and that will allow you to cover up, your muddy sections. Let me get my blue here. So, depending on what blue you have, I have this really dark, I guess it's phthalo. We'll stick with phthalo. And I wanted to dry brush. Excuse me, I'm switching brushes. I didn't mean to have my small brush. Big brush. You can use your small brush, but I'm going to do big brush on this one. All right, doing some dry brushing. I got this nice dark phthalo blue here. And this is really tricky because you don't want to do too much. All you're doing is adding some shadow, adding a little bit of this blue back in to round out your painting. It's going to create a nice, I'll say it again, the contrast. Always about the contrast. So I'm just barely adding this in. This is really, if it mixes in with your yellow, it's just going to turn green, which isn't a big problem. The problem you're going to get is when it touches the orange, or, when it gets in the red, you'll end up with a purple, which can be annoying, but it's manageable. But you don't want to add too much because then it's going to get muddy. That's the big thing. You don't want mud in your trees. So all it's adding is a little bit of contrast here, a little bit of shadow. Definitely want to add some in here. And I'm actually going to add some back into the green section too, because these colors are getting too similar. If you see this shade, if this were a black and white painting, these would be very similar colors of gray to each other. And that's not what we want. We want there to be more of a distinction between them. My paint is almost dry in my green. I don't know about yours. So my dry brushing is actually softening, and you can kind of work that color into there, and it'll add the darkness without being overwhelming, as long as you don't have too much paint on your brush. That's the trick with the dry brushing. As long as you keep your brush dry and keep tapping out the excess paint, you'll be fine. It's when you end up with the extra paint that it gets super hard to work with and annoying, because then it starts getting gloopy and muddy, and you don't want that. You don't want a gloopy, muddy painting. So yeah, it's adding a little more darkness here. Keep sticking my fingers in the paint. So that's what we've done. We have made a nice Appalachian autumn painting, and I hope that you will join me for more paintings. I'm excited about doing more videos. Although, like I said, it's really weird not to hear people's voices. I'm so used to that. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. But, if you ever have any questions or feedback or anything for me, please send me a message. It's still pretty new to me, and I'm enjoying teaching people, but I'm always on the lookout for things I can do differently. So, but thank you all for joining me, and I really hope you'll join me again. So I'm just dabbing away. If you want to, you can either, depending on the size of your canvas, of course, you can paint the sides of it and just hang it straight, which is nice. They have some pretty good frames on Amazon that are pretty nice. I'm gonna get some more yellow in here. I have over dabbed. Shame. So I'm getting some glob going on here. Very technical term. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed this painting. I'm hoping to be live streaming throughout the week of various things I'm working on that won't be classes, but you can kind of see what I'm up to. And just keep an eye out for more videos. I actually have another Facebook Live painting tomorrow. We are doing the Halloween cat. That is kind of a play on Starry Night. It's this nice black Halloween cat who is sitting in front of the full moon with some pumpkins and just really nice color palette. I was really happy with that painting, so I was excited to try and do a Facebook Live of it. I don't have to worry about filling up schedule or spaces or anything, which is nice with the Facebook Live. So if you're interested and you still have some supplies left, it will take a little bit different colors, but as long as you have the primary colors, you really can do anything, which is awesome. So yeah, if you would like to paint a Halloween cat, it will be here. I will be here tomorrow at 7. And I'm just kind of doing what I want to right now, because I'm going to hang this on my wall. Might as well. I'm at home. I'm just adding a little bit of green in here right now. I'm not going to add a lot of green right now, though. I do feel like I lost some of my green back here in patches. It's amazing how different it looks with that blue than the one that I did from the shop.